This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelly Bidlin.
It is Long Shots, golf betting podcast here on the VSiN Podcast Network. Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, Kelly Bidlin coming to you here as we talk to John Deere. Fellas, I don't think we need to take a very long look back this past week, other than the fact that somehow we escaped last week without winning anything an outright, which is like, guys, we did almost the impossible because we were all over that sumbitch and could not get anything done with all of that. That said, I had been in California the week before. I pre-signed up for a whole bunch of DFS tournaments or whatever, and I won all the money on DFS. So I'm fine with all that because all of our guys were there, just couldn't get the freaking thing home. So it was something else. And you know, Wes, it played exactly like we thought. It played easy. You bombed it. You did whatever. Everybody shot low. I mean, literally, like every single player in the field shot low. You didn't have to have any form. Aldrich Potgeider was not playing well. It just easy courses for these dudes. They're all the best golfers. We say it all the time. We say it on this podcast every week. They're all the best golfers you've ever seen in your whole life. And if you put them on an easy course like that, they can all just go light it up.
Yeah, somehow, some way, we didn't end up on the longest driving distance guy on the tour with Aldrich Potgeider. And I was on him at the Mexico Open earlier this year. He lost in that playoff when Brian Campbell got that great bounce off the trees and then eventually won on the playoff hole. Aldrich here, by the way, did not putt well in that Mexico Open playoff, but he putted pretty darn well here in Detroit, unfortunately, for our man Kelly Bidlin, who had Max Grazerman. I know, Matt, you had a guy in the hunt. I had Michael Chorbornson, who was one shot off the lead, one shot out of the playoff. So Potgeider wins over Grazerman. Chris Kirk was also in that playoff, but he was eliminated on the second playoff hole. So Aldrich gets his first win, and look, it makes sense at Detroit. Bombing off the tee, no real hazards. And we've seen those guys win there in the past in Detroit with, I think, Cam Champ, a former winner. So Bombers can win there, and another one did last week.
Yeah, Kelly, I feel for you, buddy. I mean, I had Knapp, so I was 4 inches short of being in that playoff with you as he misses the putt on 18 by 4 inches and didn't quite get there with all that. But, yeah, I mean, we had the damn thing surrounded, and you had Grazerman and just, you know here we go. I mean, look, we were all over it. It's tough to be upset. It is what it is, you know.
It is. And we talk a fair amount on here about our different hedging practices and stuff like that. And for a tournament like that, Matt, tell me I got an outright in the final two in a playoff. I'll take it because it was, was able to hedge up. I mean, hat tip to Chris Kirk. Thanks for getting out of the way so I could even do something with that ticket because it's really not much you could do when there's three guys in that playoff. Yeah. I don't know about you guys. When those three went to a playoff, I was like, well, Chris Kirk's going to win this thing. Like, not even like that Chris Kirk deserves that much respect, but I thought with the way that those guys were burning edges coming down the stretch with putting, I was like, Chris Kirk's just going to be the steadier guy in this playoff. So I was fairly surprised to see him be the first one knocked out, missing his own putt at the end there to not make it be able to continue. But, it was look, I'll take the money and run just a little bit. I was able to squeeze out of that tournament in the Birdie Fest like we talk about. And, Wes, I know we talked a little bit about it on a numbers game, but, man, Potgeider, has sure got my attention in these two tournaments. It might be only these two tournaments this year, but I think we got to start asking the question just with his distance and how young he is. Is he just got to be a look for every one of these Bombers events at least?
Well, he certainly has the pedigree. I mentioned he won the British Amateur, which is the equivalent of the U.S. Amateur. It's called the Amateur Championship. He won it 3 years ago at age 17. Now he's the ripe old age of 20. But I'm kicking myself a little bit for not backing the guy that's number one in driving distance on the PGA Tour at a course where bombers tend to do well. But I'm also looking at the fact that he only had made 5 of 14 cuts this year. Mm-hmm. So he's been really inconsistent. And you're going to see that out of a lot of young players. Like, the guys that, like Luke Clanton's missed a couple cuts. And he's been right there for the win on a couple occasions. So a lot of these guys that get right out there on the tour and have some immediate success where they, contend, they don't always maintain that consistency. And certainly Aldrich Potgeider has not. But he does now have a win on the PGA Tour.
We move into this week. It is the John Deere Classic at TPC Deere Run, and it's going to look a lot like we saw this past week as well. There's going to be low scores out here at this one
that's
again,
why
Wes.
Wes is
So what are
wearing
we
the hat.
looking at just from a course perspective?
Yeah, the John Deere Classic, my little hat that I bought at a local convenience store for just for the proper occasion.
That's right, man. The amount of money we've spent on show props, it may not be as much on long shots, but it's been a lot of money over the years.
I'm sure the company will reimburse for this purchase. TPC Deere Run, it opened in 2000. Silvis, Illinois, so the Quad Cities, so Davenport, Iowa, Bettendorf, Iowa, Rock Island, Moline, Illinois, if you're familiar with that era. This used to be called the Quad Cities Open way back in the day. D.A. Weibring, who won 5 times on the PGA Tour, including 3 times at the John Deere Classic, designed this track. Par 71, 72.89 from the tips. You have some elevation changes, and you do have some bunkering, especially in the fairways. 76 bunkers, 3 water danger holes. There are some dog legs and some sloping fairways. So players are going to have to use every club in the bag. You know, the fairways are relatively wide, about 36 yards, so they're gettable, but it's not quite the Bomber's paradise that we had at Detroit Golf Club, even though there is some correlation between the two courses. Plays is one of the easier courses. I think it was the second easiest course on the PGA Tour. We actually got the winner home here last year with Davis Thompson, 28 under par. That was the all-time record at the John Deere Classic, 256. Main defense, there is 4-inch thick Kentucky Bluegrass fescue rough. Greens are average, 5,500 square feet, 12 on the stimp. So 72.89, as I said, par 71. TPC courses have some correlation here. Craig Ranch, River Highlands, Twin Cities, Summerlin, which hosts the Shriners out here in Vegas, Detroit Golf Club, Sedgefield, Keene Trace, which has the old Barbasol Championship. So, you know, pretty easy course. In weather conditions, going to be hot and humid. It's going to get up to about 95, I think, on Friday. And then when I look at the AccuWeather forecast, real feel 102 degrees. So it's going to be nice and hot there in the Quad Cities.
Yeah, Kelly, as I looked at this, really all I did was just flip as far as the model went this week and just moved distance out, put accuracy in, and then basically went with almost the same damn modeling type of deal that I had last week. If we look, this field, there are some guys who have been playing good golf for sure. So I'm not going to say it's a weak field, but as Kelly has it on the screen right now, if you're watching over on YouTube with us, anytime there's a tournament, and don't get me wrong, he's been playing great, but Ben Griffin's your short shot. That lets you know what kind of field we're dealing with here. As you look at this board, Ben Griffin, Jason Day, Denny McCarthy are your top 3 in this, Kelly. So, I mean, you can see the difference here in the leaderboard. And like I said, there are some guys who've been playing some good golf, but it's certainly not a star-studded field. No,
not at all. I'm sure you guys checked odds around town here. We consider Circa one of the sharper golf betting shops in the world, perhaps. And I was even more blown away to see that Ben Griffin is there and getting bet there, and all the way down to almost 11-1 over at Circa. So I think that it's very easy to say for us to say that, Matt, what you just said, but also I could say, man, Ben Griffin has just not let down recently. It is incredible, this run that he's on. I mean, it's a top 20s in 6 straight that he's cashing. So I get it. I get it. I'm not looking there for an outright price that short on basically anybody in an event like this. But yeah, it's a tough field. I know you started talking stats, and I'll get to that, Matt. But man, I struggled with just this field and pricing, and just are there guys? I mean, there are some bigger names in this tournament, right? Like we don't talk about this often on the pod because I think we all kind of rely on so much recent form and statistical data and stuff. But is there a buy low point for you guys on almost any of these dudes? I mean, like just the South Koreans, Sung Jae Im, Tom Kim, like Siwoo Kim, where are you guys all been at? You're all playing terrible, but like you can get longer odds on those dudes if you're interested. I'm not, but just bringing it up. Homo's 100-1, right? Like there's some names in this field. None of them are playing well.
Yeah, it's so. I brought it up at the top of the show, and I'll bring it up again here because I mean, look, it's gambling, and I understand that we typically talk just traditional sports betting or something like that. It's like I think a tournament like this is fantastic, a fantastic DFS tournament. Like you find 12 dudes you really, really like, and then you can just kind of cycle them through and come through with like the best iteration of these 6-man teams and stuff and all that. Like, I think this is an awesome DFS week. I don't know how great of a betting week it is, honestly, when it all comes down to it. Because again, there are, kind of like we said last week, there are 40 guys that could win this tournament, probably, 40 guys that could win this tournament. With the way that it went, we saw last week. I mean, again, half the field went low. Literally half the field went low last week, and it's going to be close to the same here in this one. Though there are some guys that are going to get a little willy-nilly off the tee, and they'll suffer. But outside of that, most of these guys are going to be able to handle this course. And so, just weeks like this, it's an awesome DFS week. I just don't know how great it'll be from a betting standpoint. But as far as statistics go, like I said, I mean, for me, I popped open the model from last year. We had some pretty good success, kind of looked at what went on with that, and then just went in with some more stuff that I thought with this one, guys. And I mean, I ended up on a model that a lot of accuracy stuff, good drives type stuff, fairways gained type stuff, and then scores, birdie or better gained opportunities, stuff like that. And then, I did a version of the model and then just took it in on easy courses. But that's about it. I think the only difference for me, and curious as to Wes and Kelly, what you guys did, is because, like we said, whenever you start putting in so many factors, like for easy courses or short courses and stuff like that, like they don't often play easy courses. They don't often play short courses. And certainly when they play easy and short, it makes that sample size even smaller. So I actually did a time frame this time as opposed to, so some of the models out there allow you to do time frame as opposed to rounds. And so I just did the last 18 months. So instead of like shortening it to a certain specific time amount of rounds, I just did over the last 18 months, because even though it's 18 months, when I've started to put in all of the different factors, it shrinks the sample size down anyway. And so, I kind of wanted to see what these dudes have done on these shorter, easier courses, et cetera, and stuff like that favor accuracy and blah, blah, blah. Because as we saw, again, like I said, Pot Gator was not playing well. He goes out and he handles an easy course, and basically so did everybody else in the field. So I'm not incredibly worried about form all that much here in this one. I just want to see who does well on short, easy courses that favor accuracy. So, Wes, what was your strategy here for this one?
Yeah, and when you talk about form, there's two types of form, obviously recent form and course form. So those are two things, sometimes you count one or the other, but you have to, I think, take both into consideration, at least most weeks. And I took maybe a little too much recent form last week. But in terms of the stats, approach, I think you had to look at here, because it's a lot easier to gain strokes off the tee here. So I think there's a little more of a premium on iron play. Birdie or better. Average score under par last year was 2.22 strokes, so 68.78 was the average round. It was the second easiest course, actually, on the tour last year, so birdie or better. From an off the tee standpoint, I use good drive percentage or good drives gained, because I think when you look at the recent year winners of this event, you get a lot of guys that are kind of shorter hitters, but more on the accurate side. The JT Postins, the Lucas Glovers, the Michael Kims, the Ryan Moores. This is going back over the last 10 years. Those guys have won here. It hasn't been all bombers, even though Bryson, a former champion here in 2017, when he was 50-1 and a very new player on the tour. But, I think accuracy matters as much as distance, so I use good drives gain. A little bit of scoring, strokes gained par 4. There's 11 par 4s on a par 71 here at Deere Run. A lot of the shots are going to be wedge, so I did use the wedge buckets, 75 to 100, 100 to 125, 125 to 150, just for some context. And then some strokes gained around the green, because these greens are elevated, so you're going to miss some approaches that'll roll off into those collection areas, those short grasses. So you are going to have your chipping game on point and scramble for pars at times. And then strokes gained putting bent grass. This is usually a putting contest. If you look at the guys that have won, they've been one of the better putters of the week. So you have to look at that. And then total strokes gained, easy scoring, easy courses. I did like last 36 rounds, and that's about it for me.
Yeah, Wes, that's kind of the unfortunate thing about this too, is you look and this is taking nothing away from Pot Guider and all this. I'm at all, and any of the guys that played well last week, but when everybody is tearing up his course, it basically just comes down to who gets a few putts to fall. You know, I mean, it really does. It comes down to who's going to get a few putts to fall, and hopefully you can have a guy with a big enough number where you can figure out how to monetize the ticket or whatever it might be, because that's really, at the end of the day, what it's likely to come down to.
Yeah, no question about it. I think just looking at the guys that have won here over the years, you're seeing, I think Davis Thompson, when he won last year, I was fortunate enough to be aboard him. I think he gained like 7.7 strokes putting or something like that. I may be a little off on my number, but that's what it's all been about. I think this definitely turns into a putting contest. And what was he last year? He was fifth in strokes gained putting. Sepp Straka the year before was fourth. Dylan Fratelli, when he won, he was second. Michael Kim, when he won in 2018, was first. DeChambeau the year before, second. So it is all about the putter, and probably about a third of the strokes you're going to gain here are with the putter historically, at least over the last few years.
Well, we're just going to go ahead and just plow through here with this one. A second week in a row, Kelly Bidlin has decided to let his internet fail him, Wes. And so we're just going to go ahead and plow through and have Kelly have to come in and clean up the pieces afterwards. Get some better internet out there, Bidlin. Jesus Christ, it's not like you do this for a living or anything. I mean, what's going on?
It's usually me with the tech problems, in full disclosure on this program. So, one thing I did want to mention before we go through, Matt, this is kind of like a quirky little trend. So don't put too much stock into this. I usually have a couple little trends and angles, like how many in the last 10 years were first-time winners, how many had like a top 10 or a top 5 in the last month or something. But this is a quirky one that I found. And there's some sort of like trophy house, what it's called at the John Deere Classic. Each of the last 3 years, by the way, the winner has stayed in this trophy house, which is in fact an Airbnb just a few miles away from the golf course. JT Poston stayed there in 22, Sepp Straka in 23, Davis Thompson in 24, because Sepp Straka, because they had just had a baby, had to get a hotel room. So that gave Davis Thompson the spot, and he won. So Ron Close, who I want to give credit, he's based up in Michigan. PGA Splits 101 on X, and he had a media credential, I believe, for the Rocket Classic last week. So he asked Davis Thompson, who's staying in this place. Thompson said he's staying again. He's not going to give up his spot after he won last year. Grayson Sigg, Chris Kirk, Ben Coles, Patton Kizzire, JT Poston, and Denny McCarthy. So I guess there's the card right there. We don't need to do any of this modeling stuff. Okay, one of those guys is going to win based on this trend over the last 3 years.
What's funny is I have one of those guys on my card.
I do too.
Yeah, so what's funny is I have one of those guys on my card. So we put in the data, we spit out the stuff right here, and so what'd you end up landing on here?
Well, let me go with the one that is staying in that trophy house right from the start. Denny McCarthy, 28-1. Kind of like Grazerman last week, he's had some near misses over the last couple of years trying to get that first PGA Tour victory. Has not been in the peak form. Has not played poorly, but hasn't really been in contention in as many events as he was in 2024 and also 2023. However, you look at course form here. 7th last year, 6th the year before, and then 6th the year before that. He's one of the top putters on the PGA Tour, and if this is going to turn into a putting contest, there aren't very many guys I want more than Denny McCarthy. So Denny McCarthy, 28-1. And then a guy I played last week that I fell a little bit short with, and I played him at 90-1 last week, and now I got to play him at 33. Michael Chorbornson, who finished runner-up here last year and was one shot out of the playoff last week in Detroit. Made 27 birdies here last year, so he can go low. And he's knocked on the door on multiple occasions. Runner-up at the Corrales Punta Cana, was 4th in the team event in New Orleans, 4th last week in Detroit. So Michael Chorbornson, 33-1. Kevin Yu, 40-1. 6th here 2 years ago, 20th here last year. 4th in this week's field for Tee to Green. And he's been close a couple times this season. Remember, he won last fall at the what is that? Sanderson Farms at Jackson, Mississippi. 3rd at the Canadian Open, 4th in Myrtle Beach, so he's got some good form coming in. And then I'm going to give this guy a try, Bud Cauley, 45-1, who's been close. His buddy Justin Thomas, his former roommate at Alabama, said he's really close to winning, and he's got 4 top 6s this season. So this is as close as he's been to winning on the PGA Tour since he first appeared on the tour in 2011. We know the injuries he had with the car accident. He's been back on the comeback trail. perfect place, I think, for him to complete that comeback. So Bud Colley 45-1. And then we had a South African win last week, so I'll go down narrative street and add a couple South Africans this week. Christian Bezuidenhout, 75-1, who was the runner-up here back in 2022. He's played good golf of late, T12 at Oakmont at the U.S. Open, and then he was only 45th at the Travelers, but he was first in the field for strokes gained putting. And he is very similar to McCarthy. One of the best on and around the green. So Bezuidenhout, 75-1. Kirsten Lawrence, 85-1. Missed 10 of his first 12 cuts in his debut season on the PGA Tour. But he went back to the DP World Tour, finished 4th in Belgium, and then all of a sudden he came back and he was T12 at the U.S. Open, T8 last week in Detroit, so maybe some momentum on Kirsten Lawrence's side. And then we're going to close it out, 100-1, the Gim Reaper, Doug Gim, 124th in FedEx Cup points right now, so he needs a couple very good weeks to kind of keep that card out of peril. Top 20 last week in Detroit, gained strokes in all areas. And I think he's the guy that kind of fits that profile. I mentioned a little bit earlier about like Glover and Poston and Michael Kim and those guys. Shorter hitter that's a really accurate ball striker. So Doug Gim, 100-1, closes out the card.
As I sit over here and kind of giggle to myself, Wes, as Kelly popped in, but then popped out again. Like it's just something going on with him over there. So whatever, it is what it is.
Yes.
It is what it is with Kelly. So again, it's kind of not a spray and pray situation for me. Last week, I mean, Wes, every one of my friggin' guys made the cut, and then it just, it just didn't get home. I mean, you said, got the closest with Knapp, but Clanton blew up on Saturday, only to come back on Sunday and shoot another really great round. I mean, it's funky. Everything's funky. So kind of is what it is. I did end up on Bud Colley as well with you there. So Bud Colley did make the card for me. If you look for him, guy that finished inside the top 12 in every version of mine. So anytime that's the case, then I'm going to have to go in and give him a look. So I did that. So Bud Colley did make mine number one in my model. And Wes, again, I went about it a little bit differently this week, considering I went for a much bigger sample size of all this. But Rico Hoey, I mean, made the top. I mean, literally number one in the model for me this week.
He was number one in good drive percentage for me. So
yeah,
he
and
was
if you're looking here again, I talked about this being a decent DFS week and stuff. I mean, he's only $7,300. So if you're trying to cobble together a lineup that has some cheap dudes and stuff like that, if you need to fill them out, I think Rico Hoey's in there. So Rico Hoey made it for me this week. One of the guys you mentioned staying in that house, Wes, Ben Coles made it for me this week. So good on that. So Ben Coles. So there, I'll check Ben Coles off the list of maybe I'll be able to say that I followed the narrative street and did that and got Ben Coles home. For that, a guy you were on, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever, but Lee Hodges.
Yeah, I was almost going to play him again.
Yeah. Was it last week that you were on?
Yes.
Lee Hodges? Yeah. He was 3rd, 5th, and 4th in the various models in all of this. So, again, another guy that just when you go in and you look at approach, he's good there. You look at birdie better percentage, he's going to be inside like the top 25, and like that's good enough for me, right? Inside the top 25 with all that means he can go out and do it on some of these courses and whatnot, even off the tee inside kind of the top 30, top 35-ish type deal. And so, well-rounded for what I'm looking for here this week. So did play me some Lee Hodges. Who else ended up making the card? Mark Hubbard made the card for me this week, which was a little bit surprising, but modeled out well, and then went in and just kind of looked at him on the flip side of some of the stuff that we've been doing here. And hey, I'm gonna play a guy that can spike. And T13 last week, green across the board. T5 back at Craig Ranch, another course that people did well at, green across the board. You can see the Charles Schwab at Colonial, where almost green across the board. He lost 0.3 strokes off the tee there in that one, but he's typically gaining off the tee. And so Hubbard, decent little stat profile for him here over the last little bit. And again, another guy that I think can, in a weaker field, have some success. And then last one for me is Kevin Roy. And Kevin Roy inside the top 15 for me in pretty much every version of the model. And Wes, look, we talk about this often. We like to see green across the board in different tournaments, but if you're only lacking in one of the areas, I can deal with it, and so at the Rocket T8, he lost a little bit putting. At the Canadian Open, green across except for around the green where he lost a little bit. You can go back to the Byron Nelson, same deal, green everywhere except for around the green. So one little stat that's not really popping for him. Hopefully he can just hit the greens. I know I put in a little bit of around the green as well, just like you did, but hopefully he can just hit the greens. We don't have to worry about the around the green game here from Roy. But that's the card for me this week. A bunch of dudes with big numbers and hopefully can get themselves into contention, and I can figure out a way to monetize this ticket. But again, it's Hoey, Cawley, Coles, Hubbard, Hodges, and Roy for me this week. And Wes, it's a deal where I'm probably just going to back since all of them are pretty decent numbers, I'm just going to back them all up with top 10s or top 5s, depending on what I need to do with all of that. And I'm going to call it a week. I don't know if I'm going to have any placement market stuff, especially after last week, right? I mean, we see it's just every one of these dudes can go low. And it's just, it's so rough if you're playing a top 20 on someone or top 30 on someone and they go 4 under or 5 under and they still get lapped because somebody else is doing it, 2 days in a row.
Happened
So
to
I don't
me
know.
last week with Davis Thompson, who was right in position, then bogeyed 3 on the back 9 and ended up, I think, like 32nd, tied for 32nd. So, and I tend to go a little bit more, I guess, wide-ranging on these, where I play a lot more 20, 30s, and 40s, especially in a full field like this, than I would like 10s, where that might be what I do in a signature event. But I'll have a few of those. A lot of different motivations this week, too. Some guys maybe trying to get that one of those final spots in the Open in a couple weeks at Royal Portrush. Guys trying to get some FedEx Cup points in a full field event that's going to pay out full points when a lot of the big guns are away. So, it's always kind of a quirky little event. I actually like the course and I like the event because it's in a small market. The people come out and support it every single year. It's one of the better run events. So I end up liking it. I've had some success here. Hopefully it continues. Some
other names that did pop in the models, just for people out there that if you might like them better than me and it wants to make your card, or again from a DFS perspective, Lucas Glover, you mentioned him a little bit earlier. He really stood out for me. Luke Clanton played pretty well in a lot of the models for me as well. Alex Smalley kept showing up over and over again.
Was runner-up here a couple years ago.
Yeah, for me, he kept showing up again and again. I know you played Kevin Yu. Kevin Yu really showed out for me in the model as well. Victor Perez was inside the top 20 in a bunch of different versions for me, so probably would have been even higher, but he's like god awful around the greens. He's literally like 135th in this field, around the greens or something. So probably would have been a little bit better if he wasn't just so terrible there in that one. Max McGreevy, another name that was popping up several times for me, and then my boy Ryan Gerard is another guy that kept they kept showing up over and over again in the various versions of the models. So again, while they didn't make my card, doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't make yours. They just didn't. Something I didn't like about them doesn't mean that you might not like them a little bit better. But they're all dudes that, again, they'd at least be. I'd think about them in my player pool anyway if I was playing DFS. So. As we get to the end of my plays, we get to the end of Wes's plays. Kelly Bidlin has figured out how to get the hamster back on the wheel to get his internet working. So do you want to run through yours very quickly before you lose internet yet again, because we know it's happening?
It's happening. Sorry, there's a hurricane in Las Vegas, man. I don't know what's going on right now. The weather is crazy, though. Hey, great breakdown by you guys. That was awesome. Yeah. I love listening to every second of it.
I love the fact that he was here just long enough to tell us great breakdown. And then he lost again. So, guys, we're not going to keep you and go back on all of this. Kelly will tack on his plays to the end of me and Wes right here, just like he did last week. And then hopefully he can get somebody out there to his place here in Vegas and figure out why the hamsters keep stopping running and he can't get the wheel running with all of that. But, Wes, final words here for this one.
Yeah, I guess a couple that were leave-offs for me. You played one of them, Ben Coles. Jackson Suber another one that I certainly considered. Approach numbers are really good for this guy, but it's what it's going to turn into. A lot of guys are going to shoot low and got to get hot with the putter. There's going to be a lot of guys in contention. It's going to be the leaderboard. I think the way it's structured is going to be very similar to what it was in Detroit, where you got a lot of guys bunched together. I don't know if it'll play as easy as Detroit did, because there's more ways to get in trouble on this course. But like Davis Thompson last year, it was relatively comfortable. I think he ended up winning by 4 shots, 28 under, because he just kept making birdies on the back nine. So it was very fortunate for me. But usually you get a pretty close leaderboard. You've had a few playoffs here over the years. Hadn't had one, by the way, since 2015, but certainly could have one. I think a lot of guys do have a chance to win this event. I think you put it at 40. I think that's about the appropriate number.
Quick reminder, guys, our NFL guide is out over at VSiN, so head on over. If you are a VSiN Pro subscriber already, then it's waiting on you. So you can go ahead and you can take advantage of it. If you are not, you can get in for as low as $9.99. You can do now till the Super Bowl, to the end of the Super Bowl for $175. But whatever it is, go in, take advantage of it. I'm not going to say that the guide moves the lines, but certainly anything that was mispriced out there is going to be getting bet. So they're going to move. So you want to do it here in the next little bit if you want to play any of these things that are going on out there. For Wes, I am Matt. Here comes Kelly with his picks.
Well, great stuff as always from Matt Brown and Wes Reynolds. I enjoyed listening. I hope you did too, because there was a hurricane hitting Las Vegas or something, and my internet went in and out. So try not to distract them. We're going to do the same thing we did last week. You guys just heard all the bets that they ran through. Wanted to jump on here and go through mine as well. Admittedly, you probably heard me leaning this way as we were talking at the beginning of the podcast. I feel like I've had a pretty good read on things here. The past few weeks, past couple months have been pretty good. There is not much that is jumping out to me from a betting standpoint this tournament. Matt talked about it a lot. I do think this is a good DFS week. I agree with him, just like last week was, and very good for him, apparently. This week, I thought it was very, very difficult to find bets that I really, really, really liked. It's a weak field, and you're seeing shorter numbers on guys that, you're used to seeing longer numbers on, even if you are fairly confident in their form. Ben Griffin, 16-1 at DraftKings, almost 11-1 here at Circa, is pretty wild to see as a favorite. Having said that, everything statistically backs it up with him. He was by far my highest rated golfer in the field this week. I am going to do the same thing I did last week with Ben Griffin and play a top 20 on him. Look, he's cashed 6 straight. The game's there. He's gaining in every statistical category. That outright price might be a little too expensive for me, but I'll jump in a top 20 again. You can find right around even money on that. Not a big bet on anything for me this week. With it being a birdie fest, how much variance we can see on the leaderboard, how much changes we can see of placements there. You don't want to mess around too much with the finishing position markets in tournaments like this. At least for me, that's how I approach it. It's only one top 20 bet for this week. That is on Ben Griffin. I don't have any matchups that I've played yet. Even just initially looking through them, there's not really many that jumped out to me either. With these guys that can go so low on a course like this, I'd rather just bet a little bit, play a few outrights, cover it with some top fives in case you get burnt like I did last week with Grazerman. At least you're able to collect that top 5 money and move on. And guess what? We got our last major of the year coming up. So if you've been betting golf all season, nothing wrong with holding back a few dollars that you're going to end up spending on the Open Championship. So, look, 3 outrights for me this week, 3 top 5 plays, 2 that I am pretty confident in, and then I would say a third that, look, it's a name you've heard me bring up a bunch on this podcast on a numbers game if you watch that as well. So, start at the top, Chris Kirk. I'm on him 38-1. You might want to say this is a little recency bias, and in my numbers, it probably is pulling from that a little bit with the incredible tournament he had last week, just losing in that playoff. But, man, it's been a couple solid weeks in a row for him where he's gaining in every stat category. The irons are locked in. He's gained on approach in 7 straight tournaments and 11 of the last 12. Now, we expect that from Kirk, but even gaining with the putter the past couple weeks is impressive off the tee as well. So, like Matt talked about, as far as modeling and stat stuff, I guess I should hit that first. He put it pretty much perfectly. This is a very, very similar model to me to what I had last week, except for dialing back the emphasis on distance and putting that more on accuracy off the tee. Those are really the biggest change that I made. Only other thing is looking at more if you have access. We put it on the show all the time. RickRunGood.com, Rick Gaiman's website. You're able to do some more weighted stats and takes into account which events these guys have played on. And if you're running some of your own stats at home on some of these sites, you're going to see some guys spike. You need to check what tour they're playing on. A lot of these guys are coming from Corn Ferry Tour or something like that, and they're putting up great numbers there. But be careful, that doesn't exactly translate over to what a guy like a Chris Kirk has been playing through on the PGA Tour all season long. So I thought that was a little bit more important to do this week. But otherwise, strokes gained off the tee, good drives gained, fairways, and then approach, proximity 100, 150 yards. It's going to be a lot of wedges again this week. Opportunities gained, birdie or better. You got to build in your scoring stats this week. Par fives, all three of them you can hit in 2 shots. Basically, everybody can in the field. They should all be very scoreable. And then I looked at some putting stats because I think this is going to come down to the flat stick again this week. So that's what I did from a modeling standpoint. Talked about Chris Kirk already. Do like him. Last 16th round, he's 9th on approach in this field. Second tee to green. Tee to green I factored in a little bit more too. I think that goes along with what we're talking about with the weighted stats as well. What have you just done from getting it from the tee onto the green? Let me see where you rate out. That's more important than almost anything for me this week. So he was second in that category. Great with his wedges. He's got solid course history here too. So I mean, nothing that's going to blow your mind, but 2 top 25s here the last 2 years. So Kirk, I played outright and top 5. And then next on my list is Alex Smalley, 53-1. Smalley, look, I played a bunch this year. He started off very consistent at the beginning of the year. We ain't really showing the consistency right now, but he continues to pop them in the models. And it's no surprise if you're going to look at stuff, some of the ball striking statistics that we look at so heavily and factor them in. Guys like him are going to pop. He's 13th off the tee, last 16 rounds in this field. He's 9th tee to green overall, 23rd birdie or better. Scoring, 12th on good drives, 5th in total driving. So everything you're looking for off the tee here. He's one of the guys that's actually going to have to dial it back a little bit. I probably wouldn't have played him if he didn't have he finished T2 here 2 years ago. So having the course history to kind of back up what you're seeing in the model allowed me to lean a little bit less on recent results. Now, that is not how I usually approach things, so we'll see. It's a 53-1 shot, priced at accordingly. I'm going to play it small, though, here. Kirk I like. The other one I like, I know Matt Brown was on him as well. I don't know if Wes said he bet him this week at all, but Wes has bet him a few times this year. Lee Hodges. I am on Lee Hodges. I think at his number, he stood out to me. You're betting him at like 66-1. I got him an outright price. Cover that with a top 5 at 11-1, which is great value there on that top 5 number. Look, Hodges, last 16 rounds, the ball striking numbers are great. He's gaining off the tee and on approach. He's gained with the putter now in 2 straight events too, which you're always trying to look right when these guys who are good ball strikers kind of catch it with the putter, and it looks like he's putting it together. He's gained 8 straight events tee to green he's gained on. He's 3rd in par 5 scoring in this field. He's 14th in bogey avoidance. Recent results, T34 last week. He finished with a T9 at the Canadian Open. So Lee Hodges might be rounding right into form here. I think he's got a game that could fit this course pretty well. I think it's 66-1. He's a good play. I really like that number this week on Lee Hodges. So 66-1, 11-1 on the top 5 is how I played him. So again, high on Kirk, high on Hodges, played Smalley. There were other names that stood out to me. Kevin Yu was probably my last leave off. I believe Wes played him. I like Kevin Yu. I've played him a fair amount this year. I think all 3 of us have on the pod. We've played him a fair amount. I just can't get there on this number. He's as low as 25, 30-1 in places for an outright price. I can't play it. I don't blame you if you do. He did rate out very highly for me this week. I got very close on him. Emiliano Grillo, Mark Hubbard, guys I considered as well, but ended up passing on. Jake Knapp, I got close to getting back going to this week as well. Like all those guys, they rated out very highly for me. They're all going to be passes, though. This is, like I said, I think I've had a pretty good read on things here the past few weeks. I spent more time digging into stuff this week, coming away with very little that I was interested in investing too much money in. So it will be a light card for me this week. Again, outrights Chris in top fives on Chris Kirk, Alex Smalley, Lee Hodges, and one top 20 play on Ben Griffin. Good luck with all your bets this week. Thanks for watching and listening to Long Shots. Reminder, it is up on YouTube if you are listening to this in your car right now, maybe on your way to work. All of our stuff can be found on YouTube. We do use some visuals from some of the websites we talk about as well. So check it out. Leave us a thumbs up. Leave us a rating if you can. We appreciate it. Any comments you got, we leave them there. You should tweet them at us, though, for sure, too. That is definitely the way that me, Matt, and Wes will find you quicker. So, what is it? At Wes Reynolds 1, at Matt Brown M2, at Kelly Bidlin. Remember everybody's Twitter accounts. It's pretty impressive. VSiN.com for all of our bets, as always, and Wes's great write-ups. Definitely want to check those out. Until next week, I'm Kelly. See you later. Yeah. Make a putt, Grazerman. You're killing me.